Scripture as the blueprint to life and living.
They are sure of their mission.
Our role is to redeem the entire world.
And the stakes are high.
Do you really wish that you could have been martyred?
Yes, martyrdom was my biggest wish.
I believe that Islam is a real threat.
I fear from those individuals who feel that they will go to heaven by killing me. I fear for my life.
Jerusalem, the ancient city filled with sacred meaning to three great religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. I'm Christian Amanpour. Over the last 30 years, each faith has exploded into a powerful political force, with an army of followers who share a deep dissatisfaction with modern, secular society, and a fierce determination to bring God and religion back into daily life, back to the seat of power. We call them God's warriors.
God's Muslim warriors. They are much feared and little understood. It's the holiest time of year for Shiite Muslims. On the streets of Tehran, grown men and women weep and pray. The city stopped dead in its tracks, from the main streets to the bazaars, as people across Iran relive the great religious dramas of their faith. I grew up in this country, and as a reporter, I come back, because it is here that 28 years ago, God's Muslim warriors rocked the world.
This is where America first tasted Islamic fundamentalism, when Islamic revolutionary students stormed the embassy and took American diplomats hostage for 444 days. And this set off a wave of Islamic fundamentalism throughout the Muslim world. What were the Iranians reacting against?
The Iranians were reacting against decades of Western interference. You can see this as Iran's declaration of independence.
The ruler of Iran, the Shah, had been restored to power in the 1950s in a CIA coup. He was rushing to modernize his country, like his father before him.
The Shahs in Iran used to make their soldiers go out with their bayonets at the ready, ripping off the women's veils and tearing them to pieces in front of them in the streets.
Mohammad Reza Shah ruthlessly crushed dissent and exiled mullahs who challenged him. The most prominent, a firebrand cleric named Ayatollah Khomeini, blasted back, calling the Shah the enemy of Islam.
He brought the whole of Iran out onto the streets by pointing out the injustice of the rule.
With Iran's constitution in one hand and the Quran in the other, Khomeini offered up Islam as the antidote to corruption and Western dominance of Iran.
And I think many of the Iranians saw it as a purifying ritual. Khomeini and the revolutionary mullahs were able to speak to Shiite traditions, not to Marxism or secularist ideals that had no grassroots among the ordinary people.
With Khomeini's revolution came the world's first modern theocracy, a fundamentalist Islamic republic that stood up to the United States and humiliated a superpower.
We felt very strongly for the independence of our country. We felt very strongly for the dignity of the Iranian people. We felt very strongly about the intervention of the American government in our affairs.
Massoumeh Ebtekar would eventually become Iran's first female vice president, pushing for more democracy. But back in 1979, she was the voice of the revolution.
These people are spies working in the United States Embassy.
We were not terrorists, we were not militia, we had no training, no military training. This was a student movement, a genuine student movement. But they knew that they had to take some sort of unconventional step.
Unprecedented in the history of global diplomacy.
Exactly.
That unprecedented act was the takeover of the American embassy in the heart of Tehran. The relationship between Iran and the United States has never recovered. Night after night during the Holy Week of Ashura, religious drama lights up the somber streets and neighborhoods of Iran. Shiite believers, God's warriors, raise the battle standards of their greatest hero, the martyr of all martyrs, Imam Hussein. Faith, they say, bears aloft this massive weight.
It's not our biceps, it's our beliefs that gives us our strength. That and our love for Imam Hussein.
To understand just how much they love Imam Hussein, who was the Prophet Muhammad's grandson, spend some time at these rituals. For Shiites, about 1/10 of all Muslims, his story represents the eternal battle against oppression and injustice, and the willingness to sacrifice even one's own life for that struggle. Which is what Imam Hussein did in 680 AD. In a fight over who would succeed the Prophet Muhammad, Hussein and his entire family were slaughtered in a heroic last stand that would lead to the bloody Shiite-Sunni rift that continues to this day. This passion play is performed by an amateur troupe of bakers and builders, and it's directed by a bus driver, Yahya Ali Mirzai.
When I see this play, my heart breaks and I cry, because Imam Hussein has answered so many of my prayers.
This is a very emotional play. What is the reaction from the crowd?
The people watching are also talking to God. As they shed their tears, they confide their troubles and ask for help in their lives.
The story may have happened 1400 years ago, but on Ashura, emotions resurface as raw as if it were just yesterday. I sat in the women's section of the audience, next to Nasreen.
I love Imam Hussein and I would love him to visit my home because I've seen the miracles he's performed. One day I was penniless and I didn't know what to do. But after praying to Imam Hussein, I found 50,000 riyals in my drawer. I have seen many such miracles.
Nasreen and the other women can watch, but they can't be on stage.
That's because Islam bars women speaking publicly when young men are present.
But in the story, there were women. His family were killed.
But back then, how shall I say it? Young men were purer. Now we have to cast men to play the roles of women.
For instance, this mustachioed maiden. The drama, though, is not diminished.
It's more than 1,000 years ago since this happened. Is it still relevant to Iran today?
For us, it's still important. Just like it was during the Iran-Iraq war, when young Iranians didn't hesitate to be martyrs.
Iran's 8-year war with Iraq is seen here as a triumph of faith. In 1980, Iraq's President Saddam Hussein invaded Iran. Hussein was supported by the Soviet Union and the United States. They saw him as a bulwark against the spread of Iranian-style Islamic revolution. The world assumed that Iraq's professional army would score a quick victory. But nobody reckoned with Ayatollah Khomeini's holy warriors. Waves of young boys who volunteered to become martyrs, clearing minefields by running across them. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. 8 blood-soaked years later, hundreds of thousands of young men and boys had been injured or killed, inspired to fight on by their first martyr, Imam Hussein. Back then, Amir Fakhr was one of Khomeini's holy warriors. Tonight, as he prepares free food for the Ashura crowds in Tehran, he tells us how he volunteered to fight when he was barely a teenager, seen here on a hilltop during the battle.
I was 13 when I went to the front.
You went to the war at 13 years old? How did they allow you to go at 13?
I did whatever I could. In the beginning, I was trained to defuse landmines, and when I was battle-hardened, I ran messages on foot.
Did you think of Imam Hussein when you were at the front?
He was my example. His courage inspired me. You can never praise him enough.
When the West looks at this and looks at the rituals, they see chest beating, they see back beating with chains. What message do you want the West to have about your religion, about your rituals?
When we beat ourselves with iron chains and damage our bodies, we want to show that we will stand with our Imam and our religion to the bitter end. For the Shiites, his sacrifice has kept Islam alive for 1400 years.
And it's alive today, not only in Amir's heart, but in his household. He's brought me to meet his family.
This is my son, Abbas, and this is Ali.
Amir's two little boys are named after his two brothers, who were killed in the war with Iraq, dying to defend their country. More than 20 years later, his mother doesn't regret the family's sacrifice.
Kubra, you're a mother, and you sent your 13-year-old son to the front. You lost already 2 sons. How could you have done that?
I never wept for my sons when they went to war. In fact, I was happy. I would have been angry if they refused to go.
Is religion that important in your life?
During the Ashura war, one of the Imam Hussein's disciples was decapitated and his head was thrown at his mother. But she flung it back defiantly, saying, "Whatever I give to God, I don't want back." That's how important Islam is for us.
From the holy city of Rome, a grand Ayatollah tells us that martyrdom for your faith should never be confused with suicide terrorism.
The Western world, when they think of Muslims, they think of terrorists. So what is your answer to those people who say that they are God's warriors, that they're God's soldiers, that they kill in the name of God?
I've always said that terrorists should go to hell, and that is our belief. But if the enemy attacks us, we have the right to defend ourselves in any possible way.
Here we are.
Which is what Dawood Abdulhadi did. Like his friend Amir, he was also a teen defending his country.
Do you really wish that you could have been martyred?
Yes, martyrdom was my biggest wish, but for me, it just wasn't meant to be.
Everybody understands that if your country is attacked, you'll defend it. But what I think many people don't understand is this love of martyrdom that exists in Islam, and particularly in Shiism. Why is it so important to die?
We love martyrdom because it leads us to heaven and because we'll be helped on the day of judgment.
Are you ready to fight again if you have to?
The true believers are still here. We don't ask for war. But if the enemy attacks even an inch of our territory, all Iranians, from children to old men, are ready to fight.
Tonight, Dawood sings in honor of Imam Hussein's martyrdom.
When we beat our chests, we feel light. We share the sufferings of Imam Hussein, and we tell the world that he is our master.
Once again, the drumbeat of discord is rising between a resurgent Iran and a worried West.
The Iranian regime sponsors terrorists and has advocated the destruction of our ally Israel.
Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, Iran's president, openly defies worldwide pressure to suspend his country's nuclear program, and he alarms the West with his frequent diatribes against Israel and the United States.
The leaders of America want to resolve issues worldwide using force, arms, and bombs.
And when he first addressed the United Nations, Iran's fundamentalist president seemed to see himself as a man on a divine mission.
Almighty Lord, I pray to you to hasten the emergence of your last repository, the Promised One.
Upon his return to Iran, he told an Ayatollah in the holy city of Rome that he had mesmerized his audience.
One of our people said that when I praised God the Almighty, He saw a light around me, and I was placed inside an aura till the end of my speech. And for 27 minutes, the leaders of the world didn't blink. I'm not exaggerating, because I was looking at them, and they were transfixed, as if a hand was holding them.
Ahmadinejad now disavows that tape and claims it's a media concoction. But he has reportedly made his entire cabinet take an oath of allegiance to the Hidden Imam, a 9th century Shiite cleric who's a direct descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. He is meant to come back one day as a Shia messiah. President Ahmadinejad repeatedly says that his government must hasten that day. To find out more about the mysterious Hidden Imam, I traveled to the holy city of Rome, Iran's center of religious power.
Before going in to interview some of these conservative clerics, I'd been warned to make sure that I wore the strictly traditional headscarf, head covering. So I'm now going to remove the one I traditionally have to wear here, and I'm going to, out here in the car, quickly put this very tight fitting covering over my head. I can't do it.
So I went to this Islamic dress shop for some professional advice.
So this lady is helping me because it's actually rather difficult to organize. There's an elastic band around the back of my head, holding all this in place. Can you believe these women have to do this every day?
By the time I was deemed sufficiently covered, the head of the Bright Future Institute studying the Hidden Imam wouldn't look at me anyway, nor would he shake my hand, because I'm a woman.
My name's Christian Amanpour from CNN, and we've come to find out about the Bright Future and how you see it.
You are welcome here, and we are at your disposal.
I discovered that the Hidden Imam mysteriously disappeared centuries ago, and that God has kept him alive since then, so that he can return one day and usher in a new era of peace and Islamic justice. This center is waiting to welcome him, and it's abuzz with activity. Clerics pore over religious texts, and people even call in to ask exactly when the Hidden Imam is coming back.
The phone's ringing.
Right now, clerics tell me, the Imam is hiding like the sun on a cloudy day. That's the message they're sending even to children all over the world.
I want to go to a faraway land, and I want us to go on the journey together, to ride on the clouds and go to the land of dreams, the land of wishes, to the end of the world.
What are the conditions? What has there to be in the world for the Hidden Imam to come?
All the world's ideologies will falter. Communism came and went, and liberal democracy will also fail. And when nobody can provide a solution, That's when the hidden Imam will appear, saying, I'm the answer, and he'll save the world.
If Christians and Jews don't follow the hidden Imam, clerics say there will be trouble.
If Judaism and Christianity don't recognize him, conflicts are possible. So God will send Jesus to mediate.
And he says Jesus will tell the whole world to follow the hidden Imam. But until that day, thousands of pilgrims come here to Jamkaran, the shrine of the hidden Imam. They drop their petitions into the well of requests. And it was none other than President Ahmadinejad who ordered the shrine to be refurbished. He believes the day of judgment is near, and that sustains him as he confronts the West. When we return, meet the women of Iran. How do they fit into the fundamentalist dream? Far from Iran's capital, in rural Zanjan, Rafat Bayat is doing what politicians do, meeting her constituents.
How many women MPs are there?
Bayat is one of 13 women in the Majlis, the parliament of Iran's Islamic Republic.
13 out of 209.
But she is a fundamentalist with unusual credentials.
I understand that you studied in the United States.
Yes.
Where did you study?
Texas.
Texas?
Yes.
Were you veiled when you were in America?
Yes. You have a problem with me now?
Well, you know, I might not have a problem with you, but Americans certainly, when they see a woman dressed completely like this, they say, well, clearly women don't have rights. What rights do women have under the Islamic Republic of Iran?
Every right a woman needs to lead a good life. In her job, her home life, her education. In fact, 65% of our university students are women.
You say that under the Islamic Republic, women have all the rights they want. And yet, in court, a girl who is accused of adultery, whether she's been raped or whatever, can get stoned to death.
You always pick on isolated cases and blow them out of proportion. We probably have less rapes of minors here than anywhere in the world. But stoning for adultery is part of Islamic law.
I can't imagine any religion that would say it's all right to stone a young girl to death, no matter what she's done.
We've only had 3 to 4 cases of stoning in the past 28 years.
Do you not think it's violent to stone a woman to death?
If Islamic law mandates a specific punishment to stamp out a specific vice, I will defend it, even if the whole world is against it. Understand?
But recently, Iran's highest court exonerated religious vigilantes who had killed 5 people in the name of moral purity, including one couple just for walking together in public.
It's important to say that none of the great world religions has been good for women. Not a single one of them.
Religious historian Karen Armstrong says that Islam's prophet Muhammad was actually ahead of his time when it came to women.
The Quran gives women rights of inheritance and divorce that Western women would not receive until the 19th century. And there is nothing in the Quran about all women having to be veiled or secluded in a certain part of the house. That came in later.
In 2003, lawyer Shireen Ebadi won a Nobel Peace Prize for fighting to restore the rights of Iranian women. She had been Iran's first female judge, but when the Ayatollahs came to power, they tossed her off the bench.
I have been a judge and a lawyer for 35 years. I teach law at university and I won the Nobel Peace Prize.
But the court here will not admit my testimony unless it's backed by another woman. But the man who cleans my office can testify on his own, even though he's illiterate.
That's because here in Islamic courts, a woman's testimony and even her life are worth exactly half that of a man's.
Is there a pushback of the limited rights that women have?
Yes, of course. 65% of our university students are girls. But now officials want to reduce that to 50%. It's a regressive step.
In a fundamentalist society, can there be women's rights?
Women and men can enjoy equal rights, only with a modern interpretation of Islam. Fundamentalism promotes a male-dominated culture.
And this is the product of that culture, the numbing reality of a woman's everyday life, according to Iranian photographer Shadi Ghadirian.
What are you trying to say with this? What's the message? To me, it looks like women have a boring life. All they do is make tea, iron clothes, brush the floor, and cook.
It's somehow an objection that's to the women that always they repeat these things every day and they don't think about it. They are like a machine.
They're like machines.
Shadi Ghadirian has grown up in Iran. She knows the intricate art of self-censorship.
How do you censor yourself?
For example, my women in my photos should have veil in my photos. Like our cinema, if you notice, women when they want to go to bed, they have also veil, you know.
Exhibit.
Because we know that if we want to show our photos, we should do these things.
Because if they don't, government censors will do it for them.
This is how it appears in the books in the university. Classic pictures of art that are censored.
And imagine we studied art.
Is the biggest problem for women like you the veil?
No, I have many, many more serious problems. I think it's for our Islamic laws.
So the laws are the big problem?
Yeah.
Something even conservative parliamentarian Rafat Bayat discovered when she tried to run for Iran's highest political office.
Mrs. Bayat, you put your name forward to be a candidate for president. What was the answer?
I was told that I didn't have enough executive experience. But there was another thorny issue, the ambiguous wording in our constitution that currently says only important men of politics can become president.
The clerics blocked her candidacy, but she wants to change the law.
Can Iran have a woman president?
I hope.
Women keep pushing the boundaries here, but now President Ahmadinejad's enforcers are trying to stop them. In a new Tehran-style spring cleaning, thousands of women have been detained for dressing un-Islamically. Like this woman screaming as she's pushed into a police car, according to the bystander who captured it on his cell phone. Many women in Iran are refusing to go quietly.
If they try to turn the clock back, they will set off an explosion.
Muslims, like people everywhere, abhor terrorism. The small minority who resorts to violence is symptomatic of something many of us have failed to understand. God's warriors, the emergence of millions of people around the world who view life through a religious prism and who fear that modern society is trampling their beliefs. With this report, we have tried to bridge the gap of understanding about the Muslim world. I'm Christian Amanpour. Thank you for joining us.
Tomorrow night, meet God's Christian warriors on the front lines of a battle they believe is for the social, political, and religious future of America. Christian Amanpour reports. CNN tomorrow night, 9 Eastern.